Hey everybody, Matt from 90th percentile.ca here. For access to more study notes, practice questions, mock exams, and end of chapter question videos, visit 90th percentile.ca and sign up for your free trial today. Link below in the description.
Now we touch on the introduction to corporate governance and ESG. This learning module is pretty qualitative in nature. Just gives a lot of definitions. In my opinion, not too important. On exam day, might have a couple, questions here and there, but um, definitely not the focus of the corporate finance module or the corporate finance topic, in my opinion. Um, Regardless, key two topics. One, we're going to get introduced to corporate governance and really, what the idea of corporate governance is it is essentially the systems put in place in a company to manage conflicts of interest between shareholders, so typical equity shareholders, and stakeholders, so stakeholders including more groups, so debt holders, customers, suppliers, and customers, all that. So we'll talk about what corporate governance in a company is designed to do and how it helps manage um, or align interests amongst different groups. And then we'll also briefly touch on ESG investing. We'll talk about some definitions or how the curriculum defines responsible investing versus sustainable investing. They're obviously really similar, but there's some key terminology differences that we need to acknowledge in case it comes up on the exam. And then we'll also talk about screening and how equity analysts or investors can use different screening methods to either identify or exclude companies that fit into their ESG considerations. So with that, like I said, not too many end chapter questions here, but we'll go through it pretty quick and let's just jump right in. Which of the following represents a principal agent conflict between shareholders and management? So a principal agent conflict arises when a principal hires an agent who works on their behalf and their interests might not be aligned. So that, what the outcome that the principal wants might not be top of mind for the agents. In this case, if we're talking between shareholders and management, the principals are going to be the shareholders who effectively, not really hire, but they have company's management acting on their behalf, right? They're shareholders of the company. Management should have maximizing shareholder return at the top of their mind. So, which of the following examples represents a conflict between these two? The answer is going to be A, risk tolerance. And the rationale behind that is shareholders, of course, like I said, they want the highest risk adjusted return on their investment. Management, in some cases, might, depending on their compensation structure, they might have, um, you could see both sides of it. There might be one side of it where management has, they're compensated very well and they don't have a lot of incentive in terms of bonuses to grow the company. So they just, maintain status quo, don't really take a lot of risk with the companies such that, they have job security. So they're not making any crazy decisions that might result in them losing their job. And then on the other side, on the other extreme, you could see an example where management might have, some ridiculous targets to meet for these massive bonuses. So they take a lot of risk, and that's to the detriment of the company, like if it doesn't work out, right? So that's the rationale behind it. Going down the list, if we're talking multiple share classes, that would actually be a conflict between shareholders, so not between management. And then accounting and reporting practices, once again, kind of stretching a bit here. Like depends what management you're talking about, who might have the oversight on accounting and reporting practices, but generally, um, this wouldn't cause that big of a conflict. Like biased accounting decisions usually cause a conflict between management and analysts, or people viewing their financial data or creditors or something like that. But risk tolerance is the one that makes the most sense in this situation. Which of the following issues discussed at a shareholders general meeting would most likely require only a simple majority for approval? So a simple majority is a vote over 50%. and a super majority is more. Typically, the number is 67%, but it depends on the company. You could see it as high as 90, but generally 67 is the ballpark of where you see the percentage for public companies. So which one of these would only require a simple majority? Voting on a merger? No, this is usually a supermajority. Like it's a, voting on a merger, especially for big ones, is a pretty big deal. So you need to have vast majority of people aligned with that. Election of directors is considered an ordinary resolution, so this would be something that requires a simple majority, so just more than 50%. An investor concerned about cleanup costs resulting from breaches in a publicly traded company's safety standards would most likely consider which factors in her investment analysis. So this is going to be, we're talking cleanup costs, so pretty easy. It's going to be environmental factors. Really quickly, social factors are generally related to the well-being and health of people, and governance factors are mainly related to the checks and balances put in place and the oversight in a company related to managing conflicts of interest between stakeholders. So you could have, equity holders, customers, suppliers, debt holders, management, etc. Blank investing is the umbrella term used to describe investment strategies that incorporate environmental, social, and governance or ESG factors into their approaches. Um, well, I mean, it's not going to be ESG. Yeah, you can tell by the way the question's written has ESG in the answer, so ESG is not going to be here. We'll get back to that in a second, though. So it's between sustainable and responsible investing. Responsible investing, generally, the way like these terms are in practice kind of loosely defined, in my opinion. Um, but the way the curriculum defines them is that responsible investing prioritizes asset value or returns first, and then also considers, your ESG factors. But at the end of the day, the asset value and returns are going to come first. And then the way I like to think about it is that in responsible investing, ESG factors are, icing on the cake, if you will. Whereas sustainable investing looks for, like it essentially go out of their way to look for ESG focused companies that can provide, returns, but the ESG comes first before the returns. Of course, they're going to, they're not going to invest in something where it's guaranteed to lose money, but the ESG and sustainable investing is going to come first, and responsible, it's like not a second thought, but almost a second thought. So if we're coming back to the question, blank investing is the umbrella term used to describe investment strategies that incorporate. So incorporate, uh, once again, it's kind of a toss up. Um, but if they said something about, looking, like going out of their way to look for the ESG strategies, I would do sustainable. But in this case, I would pick responsible, and that ends up being the answer. It's kind of a toss up, but kind of just how it is in this section. ESG investing is almost a subset of these two, where the ESG is incorporated into responsible and sustainable. But like I said, the terms are kind of loosely defined in practice. The ESG is almost all encompassing, whereas the responsible, like I said, asset value first, and then ESG, and then sustainable is ESG. So sustainable is kind of within these. Yeah, kind of a weird one, but that's how I like to think of the definitions anyway. Which of the following statements regarding ESG investment approaches is most accurate? A, negative screening excludes industries and companies that do not meet the investor's ESG criteria. Yeah, that's actually correct. So the negative screens, you're going to automatically just eliminate some industries. So you might, in ESG, you might naturally eliminate like tobacco companies. In Canada, we have some, companies that sell weed that are publicly traded. So that would, almost immediately be excluded. Um, yeah, so they're just, automatically not investing in some industries. We can go down the list though. Thematic investing considers multiple factors. No, it includes one factor. And thematic investing is usually done with, like we said, one goal in mind. So, like a thematic investing firm might have some funds that focus maybe on like renewable energy, so something along those lines, right? So they have one focus and don't really diverge from that. And then last one, positive screening excludes industries with unfavorable ESG aspects. Well, positive screening would include, so the wording here is off, and that's why that isn't the answer either. Which of the following stakeholders are least likely to be positively affected by increasing the proportion of debt in the capital structure? Well, increasing debt, like we said, it's a form of leverage, which if done properly will magnify, hence the bigger arrow here, magnify equity returns. Because you have to put less cash up front, you finance a business with debt, you get bigger return on your equity. Um, so this is gonna benefit shareholders for sure, because like I said, higher return on equity, higher share price, all that. And it will also benefit senior management in most cases where their compensation is tied to growth of the company, shareholder returns, certain metrics, etc. And non-management employees, so like your average guy working in the warehouse, they're least likely to benefit from the company taking on a lot of debt. This isn't even a consideration for most employees. They probably don't even know or care. They just collect their paycheck. They don't really have any compensation tied to company growth, and that's that. And last one, which statement correctly describes corporate governance? A, corporate governance complies with the set of global standards. No, there's no global standards related to corporate governance. It's the responsibility and the decisions that revolve around corporate governance and how it's implemented is done on a company by company basis. B, corporate governance is independent of both shareholder theory and stakeholder theory. No, it includes both of these. And the whole idea behind these two theories is actually in the next answer, which is our answer. And corporate governance seeks to minimize and manage conflicting interests between insiders and external stakeholders. So that's exactly the opposite of point B, like I said, right? So corporate governance is a system of checks and balances that are used to manage conflicts of interest between shareholders and stakeholders. So stakeholders, of course, is a broader term, which includes more groups other than shareholders. So you could have, stakeholders, of course, include debt holders as well. They include customers, people impacted throughout the value chain, suppliers, all of that. So corporate governance, like I said, seeks to make sure everyone's interests are aligned to the extent that it's possible. Of course, there's naturally going to be conflicts of interest between different stakeholder groups, but we try to manage the balance through corporate governance and make essentially the majority of people happy. It's just doing good for the greatest number of people.